All right. Well, if you're new to Empowering Perspectives, welcome. We are going to get started in a couple of minutes when a few other people have a chance to join in. I know everybody has a couple things that always keep them from joining in right at the right time. My name is Laura, and I'm here today with Terry Short. While we're waiting for just these couple of minutes for additional people to join in on the line, feel free to add into the chat where you're calling in from. And in Empowering Perspectives tradition, if there is something that you're working on or towards, we'd love to know about that so that we can potentially hook you up with the right resources or with other people who can connect you with whatever you need to move you forward. So please use the chat as you see fit to introduce yourselves. Let's see here. All right. And okay, well, I'm just going to go ahead and start with my normal spiel. I am Laura Sheehan, a career coach and strategist and co-founder of Empowering Perspectives, calling you today from Tokyo, Japan. And having lived in 8 countries over the span of nearly 20 years, I am regularly in search of my community, a place where I can both give and receive support to people in career and life transition. Empowering Perspectives is that group. Founded in 2017 in Hanoi, Vietnam, by 3 women, myself included. We wanted to help people come together to share resources, to connect, and to be able to really figure out what resources were available in the here and now to help us each move forward individually. What was great is that then the Empowering Perspectives community spread throughout Asia, and we had different communities popping up all over the place. And then COVID happened. And while the magic really happens in person, we've been able to move online and have been able to reach hundreds of people, which is incredible. Every month we gather on the 3rd Tuesday to talk to a guest who is willing to provide a glimpse into her life and to share both the challenges she has overcome and the wisdom she can now share. And I say she, of course we have men. And of course, men are invited and welcome. It's just that primarily our group is made up of women. So please, everyone is welcome. Everyone can attend. Just wanted to, when I say the word she, it is just the pronoun that we typically choose to use in Empowering Perspectives. Powerful shifts really happen when you come together, whether in person or online. Listen to and share stories and resources, because you start to realize not only that you are not alone, but that people are there ready and willing to help you move forward and take the next steps towards accomplishing your goals. The most important part, of course, is to be able to tell people what those goals and dreams are so that you can plant those seeds and that they can really start to help put you together with the right resources to move you forward. So again, we'd love to hear from you. I've got a couple of people who did write into the chat, Vicky from Bali, and Embassy of Canada, Beijing. So excited that you guys are here with us today. Thank you so much. Kate, great to see you again in Hanoi. Someone in Seattle, thank you so much for joining us. Lisa or Risa, and everybody else, feel free to continue to contribute to the chat. We really want this to be an interactive session. And right now it looks like we have a pretty manageable group, size group. So really, this is your time to ask Terry questions. And I'm going to give a full introduction of Terry in just a second. And to get the most out of this session and what you want to learn from Terry and her incredible book, The Words We Choose. All right, without further ado, Terry Short. Terry and I both attended and graduated from the International Coach Academy and are part of a small mastermind of coaches who are trying to collectively make the world a better place. Terry is a true adventurer exploring her individual evolutionary journey. She is a human potential developer who specializes in leadership development and communication skills. With more than 30 years of leadership experience in healthcare, hospitality, and business ownership, Terry shares a wealth of knowledge as an author, speaker, and professionally certified coach. Terry is passionate about creating individual learning paths to enhance leaders' brilliance and elevate their contributions. Her company, The Short Group, which is www.shortgroup.net, provides live and online learning opportunities for individuals and groups. Her book, The Words We Choose, Your Guide to How and Why Words Matter, was published just this past August. The book provides detailed and sometimes shocking examples of how the slightest change in word choice can greatly impact your sense of self, your communications with others, and ultimately your view of the world. This is, of course, why Terry is the perfect person to be speaking to the Empowering Perspectives community, a community made up of highly educated, ambitious people who might feel like they've lost their sense of self or are feeling unhinged in the current events of the world. Terry is here to talk to us today about how to use words to reclaim our identities, set healthy boundaries, better understand and support each other, and more effectively dive into difficult conversations. Okay, I'm not going to talk anymore. Without further ado, Terry, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm just super pleased to be a part of this powerful group and to share what I call my heart work with you.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is. And I can tell you, I already relate to Lindsay because Lindsay, that's my world right now is social media and, kind of getting out there and such. And you do feel rather vulnerable. So thank you for that comment.
And Lindsay offers such a great service. She helped me in my last move get completely organized. And I'm going to have to do virtual sessions with her for the next move because it makes such a big difference to choose what things to keep in your life too. Just like the words that we are choosing, it makes such a big impact without even really realizing the influence that words and things can have on our life overall. Okay, since we have a pretty compact group today, I want to kind of shift the format a little bit and see if anybody has any questions that they want to make sure are answered. And if not, of course, I have a set of questions that I can get the conversation going with. But does anyone have anything that they would like to ask Terry to start out today? And you can raise your hand, you can unmute yourself, you can put it right into the chat box, whatever you feel comfortable doing. Okay, and we're having a little conversation about how words are sometimes difficult to choose. From Hannah here in Tokyo. Great to see you, Hannah. She says, do you have a list of no words or words that you don't like or never use?
Mm-hmm. Indeed, I do. That's getting longer by the day, this list actually. But I will speak to when one is launching out into social media and something about themselves, do not use the word just. Like that word, gone, just. So we're very inclined to say, I wrote a book and I would just like to tell you more about it. There's no need for the just. I would like to tell you more about it. And so think about words that minimize your effort or your sense of self in any way. Another word is enough. I'm going to do X, Y, or Z, and I hope that it's good enough. Good enough implies that there's some sort of limit to it. It will be perfect, and it will be beyond your expectations. Saying enough limits it, right? So it's just those types of words. So a couple other ones when I'm in this space right now, and you heard me do this when I first started speaking. When we talk about if I get the opportunity to meet with you next week, when you're organizing some social connection, changing that to when we have an opportunity to speak, not if, but when, right? Another one that pops into my head is think. I have this in the book when we are constantly speaking in terms of, well, I think it would be a good idea to do X, Y, or Z. Not necessary. It would be a good idea, and I would be pleased to do X, Y, or Z. So those are just some examples of the words that limit us, especially when we're speaking about ourselves or our product or what we're offering the world.
And to follow up on what Terry just said, in her book, she talks about how the word just is a form of self-sabotage, which I thought was a really great way of explaining how that word just sucks the life out of everything that you said before or after it. And in our previous discussion, Terry and I also discussed the mantra. Like over and over, you hear this mantra that you're supposed to repeat to yourself saying, I am enough. And if you're saying, I am enough, Terry, jump in, but it's almost a form of self limitation rather than self growth. So to choose something like, I am fantastic is so much better than I am enough.
That's right. And yeah, I often hear women saying that to other women. Oh, you are enough, and you must believe that you're enough. And I think to myself, no, I mustn't. I must believe I'm way more than enough. Like beyond that, because it has such a limiting connotation, I believe. I'd also like to address what Victoria put in about the getting caught up in your head. That's it. That's the entire first chapter of the book, is that we have accepted a narrative that plays in our head. And it's got there from different people in our lives, it got there from different experiences and such. But I like to say that your voice is a choice, particularly that one, the one in your head. The voice is a choice. And when we learn to change that narrative and switch out some of the words that we're hearing ourselves hearing over and over again, that I don't have enough of this, or I'm sufficient in or insufficient in some manner, and you replace that with what you do have. So that requires, the replacement words requires having a true sense of your values and your strengths. So a good portion of the first chapter is about looking closely at what you value and then tying that into your strengths.
We're getting some amazing questions in the comments box. And I want to pause though and take a step back and build on what you're talking about right now, Terry, in order to make sure that we cover all these great questions. The way that you have structured the book is that you start out with a deep dive into self-talk and the words that we choose in our own heads and how we can change those words to move ourselves forward and get unstuck and to really have a much more positive, proactive approach to things. And when I was reflecting on both the book and on the conversation that I was so excited to have today, I remembered the first time that it really struck me how words can impact the way that I feel or view any particular issue. And I remember it so well because because I was a philosophy major in college. Yes, what is that going to get you? Not much except a love of words. And one of the classes that I was sitting in, I think it may have been my freshman year, was a class on medical ethics. And the professor gave this example of how when you are presenting an issue and when you are trying to make your case about something, that it's really important that you choose your words in a very specific way. And the example, as dramatic as it's going to sound, is about abortion. He said, now, if I am on one side of the argument revolving around abortion, I'm going to choose to use the word fetus to describe in a scientific way the state of human development. If I'm on the other side of the table, I'm going to choose to use the words unborn child. And the choice of those words very clearly illustrates, but very subconsciously, the emotions and the all of the history and all of the weight that is behind one word, fetus, or two words, unborn child. And and still more than 20 years later, that example is stuck in my head of, oh my gosh, wow, the choice of words really does make a huge difference in the way that we're communicating to ourselves and the way that we're communicating to other people. And you had some great examples about the physical impact that words can have and the truly deep impact that your choice of inner words can have. And I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks. So what you're describing a couple of things there in that example, and first thing that comes to my mind are some words are triggers, right? So we have our own internal narrative, we have our triggers, and then particularly with loved ones, sometimes at work and outside of our our family sphere, we have words that are triggers to us, and they have what you're describing is an emotional and a physical sometimes response, right? I'll give you a much easier example. So At my home, we have a Meyer lemon tree, which is a very special lemon. It has a very thin skin, and I love to pick one of these. We wait, and they're almost always there year round. We wait until they're totally plump and juicy, and I roll it in my hands to get the juice going. And I typically slice it in quarters, and I take that plump quarter and I squeeze it ever so mightily into my glass of water or tea, and then I enjoy the combination of the sweetness and the sourness, and it's fantastic. And in the end, because the skin's so thin, I actually get to take that segment of the lemon, that one quarter of the lemon, and pop it right in my mouth and finish out the rest of the sweetness and the sourness from the Meyer lemon. Now, did anybody have a physical response as I said that?
My mouth is totally watering.
Okay, so there were keywords that I used that had the power to make your body respond, right? To make your body do something differently, right? And that's what words that are triggers do as well. And so that's why we have to be very careful about them. And I'm predominantly speaking now about the words that we hear from others and those that are playing in our head, and that's the start, but that segues into the words that you're choosing to share, to put out into the universe, and the impact that those words will have. I wanted to draw attention to Julia's comment, which I very much appreciate. And what you made me think of, Julia, is I have quotes throughout the book, and one of my kind of sort of spiritual gurus is a man named Tom Kenyon. I'm not sure who's heard of him, but my quote, the very first quote in the book is his: "We are creating the world by how we speak to each other." And that's just really powerful, right? So when I think about my voice is the voice of humankind, each of your voices are the voice of humankind, that carries the weight of choosing well for ourselves and for others, as Laura said.
Well, and what I love about the progression of your book is that you talk about how you have to get clear on your core values in order to be able to effectively communicate for lack of a better word, the love that you want to put out into the world. And when you're clear on your core values, then you're able to more successfully communicate with the right words. And this is the back to what Vicky also had brought up, that sometimes she gets stuck in her head about the intellectual vocabulary or not being good enough at communicating and thinking, oh, am I being misunderstood? But if you're really core on your clear value or in your core values, then that communication is just naturally more clear. Is that, so how do we go about getting clear on our core values? And
Okay, so it's reflection is really the answer. Is that, I must reflect first on what are my core values. And so if I say one of my values is to be of service to others, to be optimistic, to be positive, there's some things that I draw energy from. And when you think about your values, you can have a mighty long list. You really can, because you think about the ones related to your family, the ones related to work. And so figure out what those are. And then when we're entertaining the voice in our head, as well as when we're speaking to others, we must pause long enough. We must create a practice of pausing long enough to say, what purpose does that serve? What value does it serve to say X, Y, and Z? Because if it serves no purpose and it's not connected to my values, it's not worth saying. Could potentially hurt someone else. And if it's the dialogue in my head, I might hear it over and over and say, come on, ladies, I know some of us are awake at 3-4 o'clock in the morning in this environment, and there's this narrative playing. And when we pause long enough, even in a sleepless night, to say, what purpose does this serve for me to allow this narrative to continue to play? And then I say it doesn't. And I then assess whether or not it's aligned with my values. And I say, it's not. And therefore, I will step up and choose to change the words, from ones that are denigrating or not in alignment to ones that are in alignment with my values. Does that make sense?
Is there any chance you have an example that you might be willing to share?
Yeah. Let's think. I mean, it's constant. So here's an example I'll pull from the book. The father has the opportunity to, let's say, pick up one child from school after school and then move on to see the sporting event of another child. So let's call it soccer practice. And ends up that they're running behind, and the father comes and says to the soccer child, "I'm sorry I missed the first half of your game. I had to pick up Sarah." And so now that's like just a really common thing. Couldn't you hear that? Sorry that we're late. I missed it. You scored a goal. Sorry, I missed you scored a goal, but I had to pick up Sarah. And so now the child feels like, oh, well, the Sarah feels as though there was a burden of they caused this burden of having to be picked up. And now the son who's playing soccer is thinking, gosh, I'm not as important as Sarah. That's too bad that you missed my practice or that you missed my goal and such. But that wasn't the father's intention at all. And if the father stopped for a nanosecond to think about the impact of saying, "I'm sorry that we're late. I had to pick up Sarah," to turning that and saying something along the lines of, "I apologize for missing the first half of your game. It's incredibly important to me. I get to pick up your sister in the afternoons, and I got to run in behind, and I absolutely apologize for that." And he reframes what that means to him, because now he's thinking, what do I value? I value showing my son and my daughter that I'm there for them and that I care about them and I want to participate in their lives and their sporting events, what have you. And so there's no reason to place any blame on the situation. I had to do X and therefore I'm late.
Well, I love that shift between I had to and I got to. And I think that applies to so many things in our lives. Like, I mean, as a personal example, moving around as often as we do for my husband's work, for many, many years, I'd say, well, yeah, we had to move again. And so then I had to start over and I had to, insert whatever it was. And if I switched that, which eventually I finally was able to do, and say, oh, I got to move every 2 to 3 years, which meant that I got to try something different in every single location. And I had the opportunity to meet all these wonderful people that now I'm seeing, sometimes on repeat on these great calls. And that, so it just, that one switch of had to feeling forced into doing something to got to, which again goes back to choosing.
Right. That one's a big one. So I've been coaching this for years, and I coached a hospital executive, the CEO, and I ran this by him that he had a morale issues. Let's say everybody just barely rising to the occasion of getting the job done, and we were talking through his morale issues, and everybody was living in the world of what they had to do. And in healthcare, it's very regulatory, so there are a lot of things you do actually have to do, right? Boxes that you have to check. But that doesn't mean the leadership has to speak in those terms. The leadership can do the job of a leader and re-message what it is that the team is required to do and turn that into, we get to serve our patients in this manner. In order to keep them safe, we get to check this, and this box, right? My easy example, Laura, is the laundry. Pretty much everybody says by the end of the week, this weekend, if you say, what do you have to do this weekend? You'll say, the laundry. So when you say that, if you're thinking I have to do the laundry and you say that to somebody, I can't come over because I have to do the laundry, it's a burden. It's something that you're holding on to that is this effort that implies you would rather not have to do it. Great, I get that. But the minute we turn that around and we say, we get to do the laundry because indeed we have running water, hopefully hot. We have detergent. We have a washing machine. We have the ability to do the laundry. We value clean clothing. Our family values clean clothing. By the time I put it through my mind in that manner, and that just takes a nanosecond, and I think that I get to do the laundry, then I have gratitude. then I'm in a whole different place. I'm coming from a whole different place when I've reframed from have to get to, and I've abandoned the burden. Same thing when you hear somebody saying, I have to take a meal to so and so this afternoon, when indeed their value is to be of service to the neighbor, but their messaging and therefore the burden that they're putting on themselves is that they have to take the meal. Indeed, they get to serve a neighbor because that's what they've chosen to do and it aligns with their values.
We've got a great follow-up question to that from Risa. Do you have suggestions for how we speak about to-do lists, and how do you reframe that?
Sorry, I was reading the one before that.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Yeah, let me do the one before that first.
Okay. Yeah.
Pausing and reflecting. So here's the thing. We don't, when we're talking, just start the next sentence type of thing, even gone from Laura to me. The pause is a nanosecond. And since I started writing this book, I can feel myself sometimes say, if I, and then I change it to when I. And so sometimes that's the pause. It's very quick. It's really and this is coming from somebody who speaks very, very quickly, right? Always have, always will. So it's a matter of sort of slowing that down and letting the words churn a little more slowly so that I choose the right ones to come out. So in answer to your question, all those things are appropriate. I do subscribe to journaling, meditating, and putting a less formal practice in my day. For example, when we finish this presentation, I'm going to pause and say, what word choices was I proud of? And what could I have said differently? What would I have chosen to say differently if I was redoing it and such? And so that sort of continual reflection as well, that might take a minute as opposed to the nanosecond, as opposed to the 20-minute meditation.
And so two things. Terry also has included in her book incredibly helpful exercises to help you with each step along the way. And one of those we'll be sending to you in a PDF. It's called Your Voice is Your Choice, and it goes through how to clarify your core values. So you'll be getting that tomorrow with the recap. Also, one of the coaching principles that Terry and I both learned going through the coaching program is this principle of WAIT. And as an acronym, that means, why am I talking? And for me, that's really helpful because sometimes I find myself just filling up the space with talking. And I see Vicki laughing too, because yes. So yes, the WAIT principle of why am I talking, and going back to what Terry said before about, what effect are these words going to have? Is it the effect that I'm intending? If not, I'm just going to zip it for right now. So the exercises too, in terms of longer term reflection and changing your terminology, are fantastic in the book. I also wanted to so if you want to answer Risa's question about the to-do lists, and then we'll
Yes,
move to.
I will.
Go
So
ahead.
this is near and dear to me because I do executive and leadership coaching. That's other than writing this book, that's what I do on a daily basis. And there is such a shift in leaders when they start to think about what they get to do on a daily basis in order to serve their team, serve their organization, serve the greater good of the company, right? The greater good, period, right? If we're going to go big. So thinking, reframing that list as, what do I get to do this week, this day, whatever size the list is, daily, weekly, monthly? What do I get to do that further serves my purpose, serves others, serves my company, my greater organization, what have you? And I'd put that right at the top. What at the top? I get to do this week, right? In order to fulfill what I'm here to do. And hopefully we're all in careers, or at least seeking careers where that's the case, where we're showing up to do what we're honored to do, what we're pleased to be doing, and it speaks to our strengths, right? So that's how that switch takes over.
So from there, we're going to move back to Julia's great question. And we're moving, I guess, from more of the micro to the macro. Julia wrote in, she said, I enjoyed the recorded interview, and it feels to me that you are coming from a place of kindness and gentility that is associated with times past. In the current climate, with fear and competition driving the way people interact with each other one-on-one, but also on global levels, what words do we use to defend ourselves from attacks on self and also attacks on beliefs and values? It's a big one.
It's huge. It's huge. It's like, it's the biggest question that I get when I do these things, like sort of like globally, how do we use our voice to help and not hinder or, denigrate in any way? So there's a section in the book about that covers sort of racism and sexism, ageism, gender identity and such. And so it gives you the perspective of where to start in these conversations. And actually it begins with the word hate, and even the use of the word hate, and then how that leads us into preconceived notions. So my biggest thing, and I practice personally, is the grand pause before I react on social media, before I react potentially to a family member in a discussion, text or response or what have you. There's sort of three key things that I'm always thinking about. What purpose does this serve? What is my intention? And is this, so I say, yes, it serves a purpose. My intention is for my voice to be heard. So if I'm going through these steps, and then how will my response be aligned to my values? And if I can't answer those three questions in a way that I feel good about, and I feel good about coming from my heart and speaking from my heart to the heart of the other, then I will withhold until I can, because then maybe through another practice, be that meditation, be that conversation with somebody I am more aligned with, I would come to the place where, yes, I now am prepared with the right choice of words to be aligned with my values, and to, I don't want to say confront this person, but to stand up with my voice, which is important, because indeed, sometimes silence is complicit, right? So even like microaggressions, when you hear and observe something that denigrates another and you don't respond, your silence is complicit, right? So it's that big pause, thinking about what is the purpose of engaging in this conversation, and can you guarantee that you will be coming from your heart, endeavoring to connect to the heart of the other person by way of leveraging your values and having a set intention.
I also love, Terry, how in your book you talked about the importance of, when trying to communicate effectively in or on those really big issues, that you both, if you're in a position where you want to be better understood, then you offer information to help the person navigate those difficult waters. And likewise, that if you're confused or worried about how to approach a situation, that you ask. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
It's all about the asking. We would all be better served to ask better questions, right? So when I say that, I mean predominantly starting questions with what, how, and tell me about. If you begin in that manner, you're asking open-ended questions. So in some of these difficult conversations that are occurring right now in the political and environment and social environment, that's what we need to get to. That's how we get to speaking from our heart to the heart of another, is to ask those clarifying questions that start with what and how and tell me about.
Okay, and then Hannah just asked, I've heard when speaking to others, you should mimic their speech to make them more comfortable with you. Do you recommend that approach?
Well, that's a very interesting question, Hannah, because the general answer, and this is what you've heard, is that that's good, that you mimic sort of tone and pace, and this is sort of in relationship building. But think about this: if you get the person on there that's sort of belligerent and attacking and aggressive and this and that, I'm like, no, you're not going to mimic that, or you're going to attempt to diffuse that. So it's a tricky question. it's sort of generally speaking, that's a good way to avail yourself to being open to communicating with the other person. The caveat would be that you need to ensure that that person's energy is in a good place in the first place, right? And that you're in a position to be heard. I would never say mimic the other person and show up unauthentically, right? So if that is what you perceive would be the case, then the mimic is not what's appropriate. It's more appropriate sort of for conversational and relationship building and such. I hope that makes sense.
Okay. Well, I want to, and it feels like now is an okay time to do this, to take a minute to go into breakout rooms. I know it's going to push your personal boundaries. You're going to have to talk to somebody that you haven't met before, but these exercises have always turned out wonderfully because you get to meet somebody new and you get to further engage in the conversation that we're already having with Terry. So Terry, if you could set us up, we're going to have 9 minutes. That's it. Just 9 minutes in a room with either 2 or 3 people. And what I would like to do to set the stage is read one page, not even a page, a paragraph out of Terry's book. It's in chapter 1, and it is about the impact that other people's words can have on us. And of course, in the States anyway, this is one of the phrases that you hear a lot when you're growing up, that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm me. And then Terry goes on to say, but they may. They may keep you from realizing your full potential. They may keep you from being true to yourself and your values. They may inhibit your creativity or growth. They may impact your relationships. They may influence how you converse with others. Whether you hear such words spoken to you by another or as the voice in your head, they will affect your sense of self. So with that, Terry, how can we use the next 9 minutes to start reframing our self-talk and the weight that we've been carrying with a few of the words that have accompanied us through life?
Yeah, so I would say just think of one example of what somebody else has told you and how that plays in your head, and then and share that with the other person, and then consider how you'll change that, how you could change that, and use different words for the narrative in your head. The example that I'll give you, very early on, my mother said, many of us have our mother's voice playing in our head, and my mother said, "You can't write a book. You've never written a book. You don't know anything about writing a book. Can't and don't." And questioned my knowledge, right? And so that played in my head. 4 o'clock in the morning, sometimes that would play in my head. Even when the book was predominantly written, it would still play in my head until I chose to say, of course I can write a book. I'm perfectly capable of writing a book, and I do not choose can't and won't and don't have this ability and so on and so forth. And I changed it to say, I can write a book and I will write a book. And I did write a book. So that's what I encourage you to do, is to think about one thing that, plays over in your head and you're thinking, is that really true or not? And I'm guessing the answer is not. So how would you reframe?
Okay, so I'm going to launch you guys all into breakout rooms. It's going to give you a 1-minute warning about, and I'm going to move people around because now people are leaving because they don't want to.
They're saying
That's okay.
Laura, they're saying that at the embassy do their own, right?
Yep. So Embassy Canada in Beijing, you have your own room. So you're just going to be on pause essentially by yourselves for 9 minutes. Everybody else is in groups of 2 or 3. And we're going to go ahead and begin. It'll give you a 60-second countdown when the 9 minutes is almost up. And then you'll just be brought right back into this room and we will come together, share if you feel comfortable. Otherwise, what happens in Empowering Perspectives stays in Empowering Perspectives. And then we can have final questions and wrap it up for this afternoon, or morning, whatever time it is for you guys. Ready? We'll see you in 9 minutes. Go. And we are so excited to hear how these great conversations went. Actually, in the moment that Terry and I had, just the two of us while you guys were in your breakout rooms, Terry pointed out to me that I made a little bit of a word flub. And Terry, if you would like to tell everybody about that, then we can learn from my mistakes and my word choices, inadvertent as they were.
So I have no idea. I should probably ask if anybody heard Laura choose a word that would have been better as a different word.
It's a really small three-letter word.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll tell you. So, because you'll start to hear these types of things. So she said, "In just a minute, I'm going to separate you out, and I'm going to, send you off in these rooms." But, and she did that with great emphasis. But, you'll there might be one, or we're going to do this or whatever. And she said something that didn't sound too pleasant to me. So it was, we're going to do this happy thing, but, and there was something else. And when she said it, I thought, there's the whole thing about changing out but to end. Whenever you can, change but to end. So we're going to do this. And I believe, and my hope is that you will find value in connecting with your colleagues and this and that, right? And so instead, I felt like perhaps, you know, perhaps there was a little angst about it. And whether that was Laura coming from the place that she wasn't sure if people would like this idea or not, and so she was comforting it by putting in the but, likely in her mind. I feel that if we say and then say something supportive, you're better served. So I asked Laura if I could use her example.
Yes. And this raises another great example for me, because when my kids went back to school this fall, and they're on a hybrid schedule, so we're some days at home, some days at school. But the school administration called us all in a socially distanced way and sat us down and said, listen, your kids are going through a lot of changes right now. It would be really helpful if you are cognizant of the words that you're using with them and really help them and affirm the things that they're doing by, and they gave an example. And this is something that my husband very inadvertently does every once in a while. And it drives me crazy because he says, I love you, but, and then follows it up with what he wants to change. And this is the same thing that the school advised us to do with our kids, is to say, I love you, Johnny, but, and then follow it up. And it was meant as an affirmation of, I love you, and then following it up with a, whatever it is that you need to work on, or whatever it is that needs to be changed. And you're absolutely right, Terry, that I was in the breakout rooms. I'm still nervous about using them because I know that online, it's so much easier for people to hide behind their screens and not engage. And while I appreciate everyone who comes, I want people to find the online platform as engaging as the in-person meetups. And so I will be using the word and in a much more conscious way from now on. And see, now I'm going to overuse it. Is there anyone who is willing to share their great experience in the chat room? Talk about the words that they recognized they were using and want to change. And Hannah had to leave, but she said that she talked about speech we use to encourage children, and how, Terry, might you suggest to encourage versus push or discourage our children?
There's so much packed in there. The biggest thing is ask them the what, how questions. So draw out of them more asking, less telling, for the children. And then I recommend a book that I used 20 years ago, well, almost, when my kids were younger, and it's called Reviving Ophelia. It's had an anniversary issue, and it's geared towards girls, but I used it. I have a boy and a girl, and it really taught me to be so careful and conscious of the words that I was choosing. And the example being, I very rarely said no when they were toddlers. I redirected them. So that's like but and, instead of, unless they were going to touch the fireplace. Instead of no, 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 and then their first word is no, they were going to do this. And instead of saying no, I'd say, let me hand you this, or please play with this, or something in exchange for my inclination to say no, 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 and therefore set up set that up in their mind, because then that's the first thing they say. And they spend a lot of time telling you, no, 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 no. So it's just a matter of if that's not what you want, then you need to kind of recalibrate.
And is there anyone else? Oh, yes, Candace.
Hi. I wanted to share what Lindsay and I talked about in the breakout room. I think it's so funny that we're both like have businesses, small businesses that are but hard, it's hard for us to like put ourselves out there, and I think one thing that we identified is that there's a stereotype when you self promote. There's always that hesitation from people like us, like we question all the time, are we really experts on this one, or if there's a question that we can't answer, like how do you approach that? And so something that I guess that was in common was that hesitation to like really just say, here's where I'm good at, and here's what I offer, and here's where I can help you. And I think we're both kind of that in that journey of discovering like how else we can be comfortable with promoting ourselves without really taking a step back and thinking, am I bragging, and all that. So that's all.
So may I address that? This is incredibly important. This is a reframing, not just of the words, but sort of how it plays out in your head. If you value leveraging your strengths and bringing your strengths to bear in your company so that you're in service of others, is what I'm guessing you're doing, right? You're in service of others. How many people will not be served? Are you not going to be able to be in service of because of your perceived limitation in telling about yourself? So I'll say it a different way. If you choose, or when you choose, to hold back from sharing the true you out in social media or wherever so that others know about your capabilities and what you offer, how many people will you miss an opportunity to serve? How many people will therefore not get to know and participate in and understand the value of what Candace or Lindsay have to offer them? So in other words, it would be a disservice to not own the words that represent the value that you bring.
I really thinking about that, Terry, thinking that you are here for a reason to serve other people in some capacity. And that if you're not letting people know about the gifts that you have to share, that you are doing them a disservice.
I mean, it's one way to look at it, right? So when I look at it that way, and that goes when I have apprehension about how much to charge or this or that, I think, well, that's my apprehension is a disservice. And so that propels me to dig deeper and to find the words that aren't bragging, but they're managing myself up. They're managing up my capabilities, my value, my contribution. Bragging serves the person speaking, managing up serves the other, the person listening.
And because it's at the top of the hour, and because I want to be cognizant of everybody's time, this is the perfect way to say, Terry, what's next for you? You've got your book out there. What other ways are you serving our great community?
Thanks, Laura. So I am starting to build out some online content. So some sort of micro sessions that relate to the content. So 10-minute videos and then some related worksheets and such. So the way to learn more about that, because they're not quite ready, is if you go to my website, www.shortgroup.net, and you hit the subscribe button. I actually forgot to tell you this, Laura, that if you hit the subscribe button, you also get the first chapter of the book. So then the first chapter of the book gets sent to you. But anyway, that's a way to find out more about the related activity to the work.
Perfect. And I'm going to put your email into the text box here. It's Terre, Terre, at shortgroup.net. And in addition to any follow-up questions that you might have about the book content, Terry has also very generously offered to talk to people about writing their own book, because Terry came up with her own system to write this book and get it published in a year. So if writing a book is something that's on your list of things to do, dreams to accomplish, goals to fulfill, then reach out to Terry too to ask about her structure and the way that she went step by step through the writing process. Before we wrap up, are there any other questions that people want to make sure to ask Terry while we have got her live on this call? And if not, we will say thank you all for joining us today. Terry, is there anything else that you want to say? Any other last words or comments, encouragement to the group here?
Well, I'm honored to be a part of this, and I just will close with yours is the voice of humankind. So choose wisely.
And your voice is your choice. PDF worksheet coming to all of you for attending today. And our next meeting, the recording for today will go out tomorrow along with that PDF and Terry's email address, etc. Mark your calendars for our next event, which is going to be Tuesday, October 20th. Details also coming out on that very soon. If you have a story that you'd like to share, or if you know somebody else who you think would be great on this Empowering Perspectives platform, please reach out and let me know. We'd love to continue to expand our circles and serve each other as best we can. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for participating in the breakout sessions and for giving me great feedback. Also, let me know in the chat box if you would do a breakout session again, because that would be really helpful in my choosing my words and the structure for the meetings going forward. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you all.